Madam President.
Senator from Rhode Island.
Madam President, may I request that the pending quorum call be suspended?
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to speak today on behalf of Rhode Islanders who are fed up with our inaction to address climate change and to reform our nation's energy policy. In the media and in this very chamber, we have all seen the tactics of deception and delay intended to convince the American public that the overwhelming body of climate science is inconclusive, that there is some doubt about whether our planet is experiencing unnatural changes in its climate. They argue that the American people are not concerned about warming temperatures, rising sea levels, and shrinking glaciers. They imply that business as usual is our best option, that job-creating clean energy technologies built right here in America aren't worth the trouble or the investment. Madam President, these voices of deception and delay are simply wrong. During my time representing Rhode Island in the Senate, I've received thousands of letters and phone calls urging that this chamber take bold action to price carbon and create the clean energy jobs that will fuel our economy for generations to come. Contrary to what detractors would have us think, the vast majority of my constituents know that continuing to fiddle as the world warms is irresponsible, dangerous, and harmful to our nation's interests. Some of the most poignant letters I've received are from students, Boy Scouts, and other young people who are concerned about the future of the planet that they will inherit from us. In December, a high school student from Wakefield named Kristen shared her concerns, writing to me, "As a teenager with my whole life ahead of me, I am concerned about the dire consequences of climate change and the impact it will have not only upon Rhode Island, but the whole world." Kristen says that she hopes to stay in Rhode Island for the long term, but she's worried about the impacts that rising ocean temperatures may have on the vitality of the fishing industry, a critical economic driver for the ocean state she calls home. By continuing to delay climate legislation, we not only damage the Earth for Kristen's generation, we also force her and her peers to be participants in an economy based on unchecked carbon emissions, unwilling contributors to the damage of their planet. Rhode Islanders also believe that they will benefit from comprehensive climate legislation because energy efficiency and renewable energy technologies will be the foundation of a vibrant new clean energy economy. Doug from Newport recently started a small business designing and installing residential solar panels. He hears from many of his potential customers that they want to reduce their dependence on fossil fuels, especially in light of the BP oil spill down in the Gulf. Doug does everything he can to make his product affordable. He helps his customers investigate loan options and tax credits, and he offers prices significantly lower than many of his competitors. Doug's business is a promising one, and he is undaunted by challenges. But at this point, he has difficulty competing with dirty fuels like coal that are allowed to pollute our environment for free, regardless of the cost they impose on the rest of society. Putting a price on carbon pollution would help Doug compete on a level playing field with other fuel sources. Doug, like other clean energy supporters, has our country's best interests at heart. Doug says he wants to, I quote, "get it right" by purchasing many of his solar panels from manufacturers in the United States, creating jobs here in America, and keeping our energy dollars from flowing overseas. Nonetheless, he says that American-made products are often more expensive or even sometimes unavailable. That's because other countries, like China and India, are outpacing the United States in the advancement of wind and solar technology while we continue to subsidize coal and oil. We're deliberately losing this race at this point. It is long past due to make coal and oil start paying for the pollution that they create in our environment, and to begin investing in clean energy policies that will promote American businesses like Doug's. Another constituent, Gary from Wakefield, wrote in after hearing that a wind farm in Texas was being built with turbines manufactured in China. He was understandably frustrated that the American economy didn't benefit from the jobs that Made in America turbines would have generated. Gary demanded to know, what are we waiting for? Madam President, Rhode Islanders overwhelmingly support energy reform that will create jobs and make polluters pay. Construction workers, small business owners, biodiesel producers, and renewable energy manufacturers wait anxiously for America to start catching up with our competitors around the globe. School children want to know that the natural world in all its beauty and diversity will be preserved for their enjoyment and exploration well into the future. Consumers want to reap the benefits of energy efficiency technology that will let them keep money in their pocket that we're now sending overseas to fuel our oil addiction. Faith-based groups want to be good stewards of God's earth, as they believe mankind is charged to be. Grandparents want to share the world as they have known it with their grandchildren and great-grandchildren. As we move ever closer to the close of the 111th Congress, the question that Gary asked rings even louder. What are we waiting for? Madam President, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to append to my remarks an article in the Wall Street Journal from July 29, 2010, reporting a new assessment that concludes that the Earth has been getting warmer over the past 50 years, and the past decade was the warmest on record. It describes the State of the Climate 2009 report published Wednesday as a special supplement to the Bulletin of the American Meteorological Society. It was compiled by 300 scientists from 48 countries, and it drew on 10 climate indicators. 7 of the indicators were rising: air temperature over land, sea surface temperature, sea level, ocean heat, humidity, all going up. 3 indicators were declining: Arctic sea ice, glaciers, spring snow cover in the northern hemisphere. Those are all declining. Each indicator is changing as we'd expect in a warming world, said Peter Thorne, the senior researcher at the Cooperative Institute for Climate and Satellites. The report concluded that global average surface and lower troposphere temperatures during the last 3 decades have been progressively warmer than all earlier decades. And the 2000s, the year 2000 to 2009, was the warmest decade in the instrumental record. The scientists reported that they were surprised to find Greenland's glaciers were losing ice at an accelerating rate. They concluded that 90% of the additional warmth over the past 50 years has ended up in the oceans. They can only absorb so much, and then it begins to affect us directly. A comprehensive review of key climate indicators confirms the world is warming, and the past decade was the warmest on record, the annual State of the Climate report declares. The amount of increase each decade, about 1/5 of a degree Fahrenheit, may seem small, but the temperature increase of about 1 degree Fahrenheit experienced during the past 50 years has already altered the planet, the report said. Glaciers and sea ice are melting. Heavy rainfall is intensifying, and heat waves are becoming more common and more intense. Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that these 2 articles be added to my remarks in the record.
Without objection.
Madam President, I'll conclude by saying that it is obviously not going to be easy to address real climate legislation, real clean energy jobs legislation here in this body. The big special interests have their way here far too often. They have spent years salting the fields of public opinion with their propaganda. Their power in this chamber is immense. We may not have the luxury of waiting to take this on until it is easy. We may have to take this on while it is hard, while it is a fight against the entrenched interests, while it is a fight against the big polluters, while it is a fight against the propaganda and dissimulation and deceit and delay that are their stock in trade on this issue. But one thing I think that can reassure us is that the public is with us, that the facts, honestly looked at, are clear, that the stakes by any standard are high, and that history's judgment of our failure will be a stern one. I hope, Madam President, that together we can pull ourselves together to take on this issue so that the Rhode Islanders who communicate to me so often about this and the people from across this country who see clearly, without the fog of special interest money and influence, what is happening to our country and our world, that their voices are heard more than the big money and the big special interests. I yield the floor.